Hello, Bible readers. It is Wednesday, November 25th. We're reading Psalms 6, 8, and 9, and then we're reading from Acts chapter 10, verse 44 through 11:30. Psalm 6, this is a psalm of help. And usually those kinds of psalms are calling on God to help in the midst of problems with a worldly foe. This time it's God. When God's the problem, though, God is also the solution. And so that's what this psalm is centered around. Psalm 8 is an interesting one. Psalm 8, Apollo 11 took a disc, you might know this, containing messages from 73 nations. They took that disc to the moon with them. The Vatican was one of the 73 nations that sent something along with Apollo 11, and they included Psalm 8. This is a psalm about the partnership that humanity has with God in caring for the earth and all that God made. And then Psalm 9 is a psalm about how the needy shall not always be forgotten. This is our hope. And so, Acts. Luke always wants to connect, however this message is being spread, from Judea and Samaria to the ends of the earth. Luke wants to connect the furthest, however far we're at that point, back to Jerusalem. And so that's, Peter and John, when they go into Samaria to confirm the work of Philip. That work is having Peter and John go to Samaria. That's a way of Jerusalem blessing what's going on there from Philip. The same thing is happening here in the text we're reading today. Only this situation is far more complicated because this extension of the good news is not only across geographical boundaries, but demographic boundaries. As I spoke of yesterday, the fact that this message is for the Gentiles, this is a big leap for many to make. So Luke wants to establish a link between the church in Jerusalem and this first Gentile mission, you could call it. That Luke repeats himself. The whole story that Peter shares, it's like, didn't we just hear this? This is to help readers catch up with what God is doing. The news might have been so whoa, that they pretty much need to hear the story again. The problem that they may have had as far as this message extending beyond themselves, their own ethnicity or their own nation, the problem isn't with baptism necessarily. It's not a problem of salvation. The problem that we see, at least in this text today, it's centered around table fellowship. It's not how could God, baptize these people with the Holy Spirit. It's how can we eat with them? How do God's priorities affect our lives? Which is a great question, right? Can Jewish Christians share meals with Gentile Christians? That's their question. Are these Gentile members of God's people of equal status with those who first believed? It's a real problem. For a Jew to eat without attending to ritual purity or to dietary regulations meant a loss of identity. The entire rationale for such regulations was the holiness codes. We've read these from the Torah. That is separateness of this people based on the commandments of God. Such ritual separation was a symbolic rejection of involvement with idolatry. This is how they said God is God and no one else is, was by keeping this law. And so that's why this is such a big jump. Peter, though, is not fixed on table fellowship. He's begun to think in terms of the gift of God for salvation. He's imagining beyond the smaller things and into the bigger things. The full implications of the equality of salvation aren't really going to get fleshed out until the Jerusalem Council later in this book of Acts, but we'll get to that later. Okay. And then I jump just a couple more things to say about chapter 11, verses 19 to 30. This is about the church extending into Antioch. By doing this, Luke is showing that the expansion of the people of God to include Gentiles is not the work of only one person, but it's the work of a larger enterprise. And so we see the work of Peter over here extending into Gentile territory, you could say, but now you've got it happening over here in Antioch as well. Then Luke gives Antioch cred, connecting Antioch to Jerusalem, as this is what Luke does over and over. Barnabas gets highlighted here as well. Enjoy. I am one with my God. My God is with us, all of us, at all times and in all places.